doing this week, Dad?
Pretty good, I guess, Keith. Been a pretty fair week so far. Last couple of days has been real good. Weather conditions are good. All our people's in place.
Right.
Hey, boss, the skitter's on fire. Boss, the skitter's on fire.
Skitter's on fire. Grab the fire extinguisher first. Take the side off. See if you can locate the fire. I'll be right on to you.
Like many of you, I grew up in a logging family. I understand the challenges on a daily basis. I understand Danny's situation firsthand. Now, what was going to be a week of making a profit that he'll remember for a long time will now be a week that he'll remember for different reasons. In this program, we will hear from Rudy Pelletier from the TV show American Loggers and Bobby Goodson with the TV show Swamp Loggers on their professional experiences with dealing with forest equipment fires and safety. Recent statistics show that a high percentage of logging machines have been lost or damaged by fires. There are many costs associated with these fires: property damage, forest fire, personal injury, and even fatalities have occurred as a result of logging equipment fires.
I had a couple of skidders, a fellow buncher, and a loader. And one Saturday, of course, I was a lot younger and thinner back then, and I did all my maintenance myself. And the cable tractor I had, I was doing some welding on it. And after I got done, I noticed a dead log about half buried, or limb actually, not very big, but it was rotten. But I could see where part of the slag off the welder had fell down on it, and it was smoking. And so I seen it, and I took a 5-gallon bucket of water and doused it. And I was probably in the woods 45 minutes after that and made sure everything was okay. It was probably dusk dark when I left. And at that particular time, I drove the church bus on Sunday, and that was Saturday. And Sunday, I got in about 2 o'clock, and I won't never forget it. When I walked in the door, my wife was on the phone. She said, there's a man up there where you're working at, says your equipment's on fire. And I can remember I had white pants on, and I just tore out, jumped in the truck, and it was about an hour to the woods, and by the time I got there, both skidders was engulfed. You know, thank God the wind was blowing in the opposite direction of the loader and the fellow buncher, because if it had been blowing in the other direction, it probably burnt the whole job up. And the only thing I could figure, and the guy said that when he got there, he noticed the cable tractor was on fire, and he didn't know where the keys were to move the other tractor away from it. And that's when he called us, and by the time I got there, it was too late. But apparently that log, you know, that I seen it smoldering, and I thought the 5 gallons of water for sure would have put it out, but apparently the embers was down under the ground and smoldering, and then it took how many hours it was from 5 o'clock Saturday to 2 o'clock Sunday for it to catch up. But it was a devastating loss. I mean, I lost a lot of production. It took a long time to get skidders back out there. It almost put me out before I got started, really. And that's something I never forgot. And since that time, if we do any kind of welding or anything on a piece of equipment, we always make sure that everything is wet down, and we stay at least 2 hours afterwards to check stuff like that, because, I mean, that was a costly error on my fault. I mean, it cost the insurance company a ton of money and cost me a ton of money over the years, you know, them getting their money back.
Logging industry professionals are working to identify the factors contributing to such fires so that preventive measures can be taken. Sometimes the causes are never known because of the intensity of the fires. In 2001, Timber Equipment Application Management, or TEAM, was formed to address these concerns. TEAM consists of representatives from logging companies, logging associations, equipment manufacturers, equipment dealers, fire prevention specialists, and insurance companies. When an uncontrolled fire occurs, the results can be devastating. They can include loss of life, injury from burns, injury from slip and fall trying to escape from the fire, smoke inhalation, partial damage or complete destruction of equipment, fire spread to the forest, nearby structures, or other forest equipment. Financially, the results can also lead to loss of equipment, loss of your job, business downtime that may result in the loss of a contract, an increased cost of insurance, inability to obtain insurance, or a combination of many of these at one time. There could be environmental pollution cleanup, So would it not be better to prevent the fire in the first place? Our objectives will be covered in 3 segments. In the first segment, we will show you how to understand how combustion works, identify how an internal combustion engine contributes to fires, understand the fire dangers in the woods. Then we will move to segment 2 and identify causes of fires on forestry equipment, recognize how a fire can spread on forestry equipment, list steps to reduce the potential of fire on forestry equipment. Then we will go to segment 3 and discuss the need for an emergency management plan, explain the fundamentals of portable fire extinguishers, and demonstrate proper use of portable fire extinguishers. We will explain the fundamentals of operation and use of fixed onboard fire suppression systems.
When you have a fire, there's 3 things that makes up a fire. You got to have oxygen, fuel, and heat. And there's obviously some items that we have no control over. We have no control over the heat. I mean, the heat comes from the engine, the turbo, the exhaust system. One thing that we do have control over is, and we can't take the oxygen out because we would die and the tractor wouldn't run, we have over the fuel. We've got to keep the debris off the manifolds, out of the belly pans. It's important that you drop the belly pans and dig all the debris out. The least amount of fuel you have in there, the less the fire is going to have a chance of starting. And if it does get started, the easier it's going to be to put out. I mean, with the equipment, you got fuel lines, you got oil lines, you're going to have grease on it, that stuff burns. But there's not enough of it really around the engine to actually burn the tractor up. But if it's got a lot of leaves and debris and fuel down in there, once it gets to burning the rubber and stuff, then you can't put it out. So the only thing we have control over is the fuel for the fire. And if we get the debris and the fuel out the tractors, clean the tractors up basically, it eliminates a lot of the hazard of a fire. And cheapest thing you can do.
The majority of equipment fires are preventable. One area that needs to be addressed is understanding the basic fundamentals of fires. What is a fire? Fire is the process of burning a fuel in the presence of air. To have fire, you need fuel, air, and a heat source. All 3 elements must be present in order for fire to take place. The neat thing is, if you remove any one element, you prevent the fire. When we discuss the fuel source, we discover that there are many fuel sources on logging equipment. You know the most common ones: diesel fuel, hydraulic fluid, engine oil, and even engine antifreeze. But are you aware that there are many more fuel sources? For example, plastics, rubber on hoses, rubber on electrical wiring, and the list can go on. But what about the most common source normally found on the equipment? Consider the environment that the machine is working in, and you will find pine needles, leaves, sawdust, bark, twigs, and small branches.
Well, what can influence a fire is, of course, if you feed it, the fire is going to get a lot stronger. So the best thing to do is try to avoid having like debris or any types of oil or any types of solvents around the equipment. Those are all stuff that will really influence a fire and make it a very hot fire.
Air is all around us. Air is the most difficult, if not impossible, element to control. But we got to have it. Wind and engine cooling fan air can intensify the fire. Heat or ignition sources are all around the equipment. The most prevalent is the engine and its exhaust components. Exhaust components can reach 1,000 degrees or more, but wood has a kindling temperature of around 500 degrees. There are several more that deserve discussion. Friction heat from moving parts, such as malfunctioning brakes. Sparks from welding, abrasive grinding. Faulty wiring, such as a worn battery cable. You know it. You see it all the time. Once a fire starts, some byproducts are produced. The first is smoke. Smoke is the unburned product of combustion. It contains gases, water vapors, and tiny particles of burnable fuel. Smoke can contain toxic gases, and most importantly, it can cause injury or even death if inhaled in sufficient quantities. When smoke is seen coming from anywhere, it means that some fuel has been heated and is burning. Some items to remember about fires. Did you know that forest debris fires can often smolder with no or little smoke for long periods of time and can be intensified by the engine cooling fan or even by wind? The internal combustion engine provides the power to move these massive machines and move enormous payloads. However, the engine produces the heat source for the vast majority of fires. Keep in mind that heat is a byproduct of an internal combustion engine. The hottest part of the engine is the turbocharger and exhaust system components. Much of the heat passes out of the exhaust pipe and dissipates in the air, but some of the heat stays in the engine compartment. Additionally, radiators, air intake cooler systems, and oil coolers also dissipate heat. Government-mandated EPA standards continue to increase temperatures in the engine and engine compartments. When heat is transferred from the exhaust manifold, turbocharger, muffler, or exhaust pipe, nearby materials can ignite combustible fuel sources. Heat can cause various components to break down, or insulation on electrical wires can crack or melt. Being aware of these hazards can prevent the spread of fire to other fuels on the machine or in the forest. We can now look at the external issues dealing with fires on logging equipment. Weather conditions such as dry foliage, low humidity, wind, and high temperatures increase fire potential. The wood supply and demand factor is often overlooked. In years past, we've seen an increasing number of claims after a prolonged wet period in which the logger is running wide open and trying to dig himself out of the hole from a low production period of quotas or weather-induced shutdowns. Just as the machine provides the heat source, the woods provide many fuels in many different forms. The most common are bark, leaves, pine needles, sawdust, peat, and undergrowth. Understanding this should encourage you to keep them out of the machine or remove them regularly when they do accumulate. Don't you wish it was this easy? Add in drought or dry conditions in the woods and you greatly increase the fire hazard. As the temperature rises on hot days, fire in the woods will ignite and spread much faster and easier. A major concern to every logger is wind. Wind in the woods will dry out the fuel, making it easier to ignite. Once a fire starts, wind in the woods will make a fire burn faster or cause hot spots to burst into flames. Another source of wind is fan air inside the engine compartment. It will dry out debris and make the fire in an engine compartment burn faster. It too can act like the wind and cause a hot spot to burst into flame and move debris around. Another concern is that fan air can cause delay in detecting a fire, as the resulting smoke may be blown away from the operator's view, especially on machines with the engine mounted behind or to the side of the operator. Remember, if you suspect a fire, turn off the machine before you exit the machine. That will turn off the fuel source and fan air. Turn off the master switch when you leave the area of the machine to disconnect electrical energy. This will remove an ignition source during your absence.
The best element to cause a fire on a machine to burn, number one would be debris. For example, sawdust, leaves, pine needles, elements like that. And again, I can't stress enough, oily rags, gloves, to make sure they're out of the compartments where they shouldn't have to be. So.
Understanding the key role of fuel, air, and ignition sources helps us understand how a fire burns. Key elements to know are that hot surfaces such as turbo or exhaust manifold can ignite forest trash. Similarly, sparks from electrical shorts, the exhaust system sparks from saw teeth on rocks and trees. If forest equipment contacts power lines, it can be an ignition source as well. An often overlooked ignition source is friction heating. This can occur from failed bearings, from debris rubbing on rotating shafts, or from driving forest equipment with the parking brake engaged. Of course, no discussion is complete unless you talk about smoking materials such as cigarettes, lighters, or matches.
My job is a little bit different than a conventional logger. We're down in the swamp, but to give you a personal experience, just the other day, we had Justin on the fella buncher. We was cutting down beside of a field, and any time you get close to a field, the vines and the leaves and stuff in the trees right now, it's dry, the trees are full of leaves, and when I was tearing the bushes down with the skidder, because he's not experienced as Smitro is, so I had him trying to stump, so I was tearing the bushes down for him. And we have to blow our tractors out, as far as the heat for the radiator, probably once a week. But within 2 hours, my tractor started heating up because all that fan had sucked the debris into the motor engine compartment of the tractor. So you got to be aware of the environment. I mean, really, running bushes down is probably one of the worst things you can do with a tractor as far as a fire hazard, because of all the debris that envelops the tractor when you're tearing the bushes down. But and this time of year is so hot and dry, any of that debris that falls on the tractor, it'll sift down around the muffler or down on top of the manifold, and it's a fire hazard. If you ever seen a tractor, when the sun goes down or at night, the turbo is blood red. We never see it during the day because of the sunlight. But if you cut a tractor off, and all the equipment manufacturers tell you, you need to let the tractor idle for 5 minutes, let the turbo cool down. Because if you just shut it off when it's like a high idle and just cut the key switch off, that turbo turns blood red. It's amazing that we don't have more fires than we do for simply that fact. But if you let the tractor idle down for 5 minutes, let it cool off, and while it's doing that, get up there and rake all the debris off the hood, and take your side guards off and check it out while it's cooling down, then shut it off. And not only will you prevent forest fires and equipment fires, you'll make your turbo and your engine will last longer. So a lot of things we can do, simple things we can do to make it work.
Fires in an engine compartment can spread by forest trash falling or blown from the top of the engine onto other accumulated trash, which causes ignition of the trash. Remember that a cooling system fan can turn a smoldering fire into a flaming fire. Spraying or dripping fluids can feed and spread the fire, as well as melted plastic components can drip or pool or run down onto other combustible materials, thus spreading a fire. A small amount of forest trash under the right conditions can become ignited and burn inside an engine compartment without the operator even being aware that the machine is on fire. Forest trash can get into small openings and accumulate in areas that are difficult to see or clean. Trash on a machine increases the potential for fire and can make the fire burn faster. Wind and fans can intensify the fire. Forest trash on the turbo or exhaust manifold can begin glowing or flaming, and if glowing, flaming material falls or is blown onto other accumulated trash, it can ignite and can cause a fire. Your goal is to keep trash away from heat sources. You can accomplish this through daily, weekly, monthly cleaning and maintenance. Read the operator's manual. It's all detailed in there. Friction can occur when debris becomes wedged tight against rotating parts, which can overheat and begin to burn. Another source may come from a machine with a faulty interlock, or an older machine that may not have the interlock system and the operator forgets to release the brake. Other areas where friction often occurs are failed or improperly lubricated bearings, and they can overheat. Debris clogged in the saw head can overheat and begin to burn. Improperly adjusted V-belts are a potential ignition source that is not often considered. The belts heat as they flex or slip. Leaks can occur from chafing, damaged or leaking hoses, tubes, and fittings. These failures can allow combustible fluid to contact hot exhaust components. Small leaks can produce a fine mist or weeping that can be ignited and produce sizable flames inside the engine compartment.
Steps that we take to try to prevent fires on our equipment, the main thing is, again, to take your people, go over the piece of equipment, train them, make sure that the equipment is clean, make sure they understand what to do just in case of a fire. And the most important thing, is if they see any type of debris in there, is to take care of it or let us know so we can go out there with pressure washers and wash the equipment and stuff. So, you know, those are the real most important factors about to try to prevent a fire on a piece of equipment.
In order to prevent fires, you must first know the equipment, read, understand, and follow the operator's manual recommended practices for service and maintenance. Here are some key issues. Prior to starting the machine, perform daily inspection as outlined in the operator's manual. Inspect hoses and electrical wiring for damage, wear, and properly replace as needed. You know what to look for. This step is crucial, but sometimes it's the most aggravating. Clean the machine often. Have a regular program to clean forest trash from the machine and be aware that conditions may require more frequent cleaning. Remember that hot surfaces will dry out trash and debris. Intake air cooler systems, oil coolers, and radiators can become very hot if the air flow is blocked. When doing repairs to hydraulic lines or hoses, use factory recommended specifications. Then properly attach and secure all hoses to prevent chafing and unexpected damage. When doing electrical work, install appropriate fuses on any aftermarket electrical wiring. Properly attach and secure electrical wires to prevent chafing. We recommend that you contact the dealer for further assistance. Before welding, remove debris and follow manufacturer's recommendations. Be familiar with specific manufacturer's equipment, warning labels, and manuals. Perform a walk-around and inspect portable fire extinguishers and onboard fire suppression systems. If the equipment is equipped, inspect water tanks and keep them full at all times. Clean up spilled or leaked fluids and remove debris from around known hot surfaces. Be prepared for the unexpected. Always remember to shut the machine down before refueling. When the day is done, park machines in cleared areas at least 50 feet from any other equipment. Release hydraulic pressure by grounding blades, grapples, booms, and such. This removes the high pressure of the hydraulic lines. Again, at the end of the workday, shut off the engine. Use the factory electrical disconnect and observe machines for at least 30 minutes to ensure proper cool down. The 30 minutes are crucial as this is the period when smoldering fires often burst into flames. Once the cooling air from the fan is gone, the engine temperature will rise and may possibly ignite trash. This time can be used for end-of-day activities such as cleaning the machine of debris, greasing, refueling, and inspection. Keep fuel supplies securely locked to prevent intentional damage by vandals, hunters, eco-terrorists, or children.
We need to document our safety meetings. You know, we're all good for telling people when something happens, but you got to document it. And probably one of the things that I have the most trouble with doing, and it's so simple, is to make a simple evacuation plan. You know, everybody's got cell phones and we got radios on our equipment, but do you know where the hospital is? Do you know where the fire department is? And it don't have to be no elaborate map. Just take a piece of paper, a pencil, put where the deck is, the road numbers, to the nearest fire station, to the nearest hospital. That way, if you're not on your job and someone gets hurt, they know exactly where to call. Of course, you're going to call 911, but you need to know how to get there yourself. And it's just simple things like that. It's documentation is the main thing that if I had to tell any logger, document what you do and just talk to your men. Communication is the key to everything.
In case of fire, don't panic. Most fires that occur on the forestry equipment begin small. Continued operation of a burning machine will typically cause the fire to grow. Shutting down the machine will often reduce the intensity of the fire. Remember, at the first sign of fire, shut the engine off. Most people do not plan to fail, they just fail to plan. Have an emergency action plan. Be prepared for fires as well as other emergencies and train all employees on their duties and responsibilities. Establish resources such as fire extinguishers, fire cart or wagon, and know how to respond and properly use them. Make this part of your annual training safety compliance program. Every machine should have a charged fire extinguisher that is properly suited for your job. Sizes and types must be based on recommendations from the manufacturers and federal regulations. Extinguishing agents separate the flame from the fuel, separate the flame from the air, or cool the heat of the fire. Fire extinguishers work best when used as soon as the fire is discovered. Remember, the longer a fire burns, the hotter and faster the fire burns. Proper use of portable fire extinguishers. Mount extinguishers in a visible and readily accessible place like crew trucks and service vehicles. Visually inspect the fire extinguisher each day to ensure it is fully charged and operational. Recharge fire extinguishers immediately after each use. So, what have we learned? If you see smoke during machine operation, immediately stop the engine. Components keep pumping if their power source is not interrupted. And identify the source of the smoke. If flames are seen, again stop the machine and turn off the engine and then call for help. Do not bail out of a running or moving machine. If possible, disconnect the battery by using the battery disconnect switch. Your safety is paramount. Grab the extinguisher and approach the fire from a safe position. Aim the stream of the fire extinguisher at the base of the flames. If the machine has an access hole, place the nozzle into the hole. If the fire is outside of the enclosed area, don't spray at the smoke. Spray at the base of the flames or extinguishing agent will be wasted. Use the fire extinguisher to knock the flames down. Pause, and then reapply additional fire extinguishing agent if needed. Soak trash fires with water. We recommend that you have both dry and wet agent extinguishers. The dry agent smothers the fire. The wet agent cools and soaks the fire. Operation and use of fixed onboard fire suppression equipment.
When properly designed, installed, and maintained, automatic fire suppression systems have proven to be the most effective means of protecting forestry equipment from fire. Data I've collected over more than 15 years has shown these systems to extinguish or control in about 85% of all fires, saving the machine. For any such system to be most effective, the equipment operator must know the basics of how to work with the system. The servicing company for your brand of system or the loss control folks from your insurer can be helpful in improving your ability to do that. Daily operator inspection is important, as well as qualified periodic maintenance or servicing of fire suppression systems and any other onboard special fire suppression equipment, such as water tanks. If your machine is equipped with an onboard fire suppression system, use it first to attack a fire, before the fire extinguisher. It is not only more effective in that order, but is your safest way to attack a fire. Learn how it works. Know if your fire system is automatic and how to manually release it. Know how to work around it without accidentally discharging it. Know how to recognize when the system requires attention, such as for loss of electric power or disabled detection. Most systems use a dry chemical or liquid agent. The extinguishing agent acts to chemically shut down and extinguish the fire. Fixed systems, once activated, will dump all the fire extinguishing agent at the same time. This is a one-time use, which then requires recharging before its next use. Protection schemes are either total flooding or local application. Both are used in logging equipment. Total flooding requires an enclosed compartment which is used to help disperse the agent. For water systems, they must be maintained, cleaned, and kept in complete working order. The equipment owner's manual will explain the procedure for maintaining water tanks. These are basically a larger version of a fire extinguisher and not truly equivalent to an automatic fire suppression system. Automatic fire suppression extinguishes in about 2/3 of successful discharges, suppressing the fire in 1/3 of the incidents. Therefore, it is important to stand by with a portable fire extinguisher after the fixed system has dumped, in the event that the fire is not completely extinguished. We find that liquid agents such as loaded stream, foam, or wetting agent extinguishers work best for this, because flare-ups are usually caused by hot steel or embers, where water-based extinguishers cool better.
If you get any equipment, the first thing to do is put a fire suppression system on and train their people to try to keep the equipment as clean as possible, you know, and always have some backup.
We've covered a lot of ground over the past 20 minutes, from explaining elements that make up a fire, how to identify areas of concern in equipment fires, what to do to prevent equipment fires, and most importantly, what to do in the event of an equipment fire. So just remember that most people do not plan to fail, they just fail to plan. Have an emergency action plan ready and trained. Thank you. Sparks from the West. Shut up.
I'm sorry.
Sparks. What is this obsession with sparks? How far do you draw your stomach in when you're on film?
Jimmy, I suck it in until it touches my back. That way I know that I'm gonna look good, because see, the camera adds about 15 or 20 pounds. I tell my friends that, Jimmy, and they go, well, Bobby, how many cameras you got on you? I said, at least 2 or 3.
Understanding this should encourage you to keep dirt off.
All right, understand.
Oh boy, okay. Don't you wish it was this easy?
Been a pretty fair week so far. Last couple of days have been real good. Weather conditions are good.
Bobby, tell us, I understand that antifreeze will actually burn.
Jimmy, it will. Antifreeze is, I would almost say it's like water to a grease fire in the kitchen. If you throw antifreeze on a fire, that fire will blaze up like most people don't realize that. It ain't a Slambo's gas, but it's right next to it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it is or not. It just sounded good.
Yeah, it did sound good. All right. Increased costs of insurance, inability to attain insurance. I probably need to read this thing through anyway.
You know, we're all in it together, and you know, if we can make each logger a good logger, it will keep our insurance rates down, and that's the hardest thing to control is stuff like that. I mean, people don't think about when they start getting into logging, putting a tree on a truck, you know, they don't think about all the outside costs until you get in it, and anything that we can do to make our rates lower and stuff like that is going to help us all in the end.